Woo! What's going on, guys? Orange Farm coming at you guys today with another video. In today's video, man, we're going to be talking about Detroit Lions, and we're going to be talking about a topic. I don't think it's controversial or anything like that, but it's about the Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. Is he really on the hot seat? I personally think he is. Okay. Now, this is a guy that came over from the New Orleans Saints with Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was a tight ends coach over in New Orleans. Sean Payton giving big praises to Dan Campbell before he coming over, and Dan Campbell poaching DB's coach Aaron Glenn at the time, making him a first-time defensive coordinator for our Detroit Lions back in 2021. Now, I've always said that, whenever there's like you see these first-time DCs, first-time OCs, anybody that has a first-time head coach, you always want to give these guys a little bit of slack, a little bit of a break, right? And we've seen some good and bad from last year. But overall, this defense in 2021 was really bad. They were ranked like 28th, 29th, I think, in the league overall when it was all said and done. And it was one of those defenses last year that wasn't really an attacking defense. It was more of a gap-related. D-line didn't like to attack. They kind of just, stood their ground, see where, kind of looking to see where the ball was going, not going after the particular O-lineman, not trying to get into their heels and be in attack mode. It was more, like I said, stand up, see where your gaps are, maintain your assignment, maintain your gaps, your containment. And it was kind of a boring defense. It was a little bit of a boring defense. So what do? In 2022, they change it. Everybody goes in an uproar. We're finally going to get a defense that loves to attack, that loves to get to the quarterback, blah, blah, this and that. I was on board with it. Anybody would have been on board with it watching that horrific defense in 2021. They were terrible. And Aaron Glenn getting coaching interviews for head coaches last year was an absolute friggin' joke. He was never getting hired anywhere. I don't know why people were so worried about losing that guy. A lot of people were extremely worried about losing him. And like, we were one of the worst defenses in the league last year. Why are people so worried about it? Well, Mark, man, we had some injuries. Okuda, we don't have a good linebacking core. We don't have this. We don't have that. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, that's true, but coaches are supposed to coach, man. Like, I know we didn't have the 2000 Ravens and the 1985 Bears like Adam Bayhoon. Baydoun was saying the other day on Woodward Sports. I get that. Like, of course, we don't have any of that. But this team preached, all of them, starting from Dan Campbell down, all these coaches preached that they were going to put their players in the best positions that they could, talent-wise, or even if they didn't have, even if they couldn't figure out what their real talent was, if they weren't the most talented guys, they were going to put them in positions to their best interest, to their strengths. So far, this defense hasn't done that in 2 years. And then people were like saying, well, we can't just keep getting rid of coaches all the time. Why not? Like, you're not getting, okay, let me tell you something right now. Dan Campbell is going nowhere right now. He's going nowhere. Neither is Brad Holmes. And I will get to those two guys because those two guys are not blameless. They should take some of the blame for this. They have to. Dan Campbell hired Aaron Glenn. Brad Holmes okayed it. Those guys share the same brain, apparently. So they have to take some blame. Of course, Brad Holmes with some of his drafts, some of his draft picks. The guys that are hurt are what's more concerning, I think. You're drafting guys like Levi Onwuzurike, guys this year, Pascal, the Jameson Williams things, but this is not about the offense, okay? This is not about the offense, but the defensive guys And the thing is, Brad Holmes has brought in a ton of new defensive players. Just no superstars. And I think it comes down to, I think the clock is ticking on that too. And I think they'll start spending money more next year in 2024. That's my guess. I have no idea what the real plan is. Nobody does. But I think they're not spending the money because of those reasons, that they're going to wait on that. But I'm getting off topic. This is about Aaron Glenn and the situation, what's going on with his defense. But Dan Campbell's not afraid to make a change. He's not afraid to make it. Look what happened last year with this offense. This offense last year at this time was horrific. Terrible. We went, 8-9 games. Campbell made the switch, threw up Anthony Lynn up in the booth, demoted him. I don't know what he was even doing for the last half of the season. Anthony Lynn. And then he ended up getting fired at the end of the year. And then the offense became really good at the end of the year. Like after week 9, 10. All of a sudden, Ben Johnson takes over and his offense starts flying all over the football, scoring points, scoring touchdowns. Same personnel too. So it's not like, so people are saying like, well, what are you going to do? Like Aaron Glenn doesn't have the personnel. BS. Look what happened. I'll go back to last year. What were the additions? Josh Reynolds? We lost like Hawkinson. Swift was in and out of the lineup. The offense still shined. Now, it has to fall on some of the players. I'm not just saying the players are not blameless either. They have to be. They're the guys that play. But I don't want to hear that Aaron Glenn doesn't have anybody to work with. What happened to Emmanuel Warrior? How did he turn in such a terrible, terrible cornerback? How? Is it because he's hurt? Is it because he's got the mental thing going on about the money? He keeps thinking about the money? What's going on with him? Jeff Okudah isn't a good football player. He's having a great year. Finally showing us he's a third overall pick. Tracy Walker, we lost him. Okay, I get it. Deshaun Elliott, he was a starter in Baltimore. He started in Baltimore. Baltimore is big on defense, even though they're not having a very good defensive year this year. Hutchinson, he's a rookie, but he's got some skill. Ali McNeil, a third-round pick. Looks like he's a bit better this year. Not much, but it looks like he's a bit better. Charles Harris, what happened to him? Does Charles Harris have a picture on a milk carton? Because I don't know where he is at all. He's had one good game, maybe. What happened to those guys? Those guys are talented, I thought. Malcolm Rodriguez is a hell of a linebacker. 6th-round rookie, don't matter. He's one of the best linebackers in the NFL. He's like, I'm not saying the kid is Ray Lewis, but he's having a fantastic year so far. PFF through the roof. Get all kinds of tackles, making plays, popping balls out. He looks like the real deal. He's talented. Anzalone comes and goes. He has his bad moments and he has his good moments. So, but he's got some talent. So it's not like there's like no talent on this defense, because we said the same exact thing last year about the offense. Oh man, you're getting rid of Lynn, so what's going to happen? All of a sudden we were explosive. Now, I'm not saying that we have the next Ben Johnson on our defensive coaching staff. Because you go look at our coaching staff for defense, I don't know who, let's say Glenn does get fired, demoted, put in a corner, something happens with him. Just say that does happen, okay? I'm going to get rid of this crap. Say that does happen. Now, who takes over? Because it'll have to be in-house during this year. You got guys like David Carrero, defensive assistant, outside linebacker coach, Cameron Davis, assistant D-line coach, Brian Duker, safeties, Kelvin Shepard, linebackers, Todd Wash, D-line, and the guy that I probably think would take over for at least the interim would be Aubrey Pleasant, the DBs and passing game coordinator. I think it would probably be him, but I don't know at all what kind of schemes. I don't know if he's the next guy. Like a Ben Johnson was a guy that a lot of teams, especially the Bengals, were really looking at as bringing over to coach. And Dan Campbell kept blocking that very smartly. Kept blocking it by upgrading his titles. And so you can't take him off our roster. You can't poach him, which is brilliant by Dan Campbell because he knew what we had in him. He's probably going to have to do it again if he wants to keep him around. But don't say there's no talent on the defense whatsoever. I know we don't have a bunch of talent on there, but don't say there's nobody to work with, because there's guys to work with. They're already talking about making schemes. And this is making different schemes with this team. And this is the kiss of death for Aaron Glenn here, okay? This is what I think. Campbell comes out and says, "Oh man, I love Aaron Glenn. Love him. Love what he's doing. Love what kind of that man can coach. He's a hell of a coach." Okay, great. Then the next day you see changes are going to be made across the board. That right there tells me that he is literally walking on hot coals, Aaron Glenn. Let me tell you a little bit something about this Lions defense and where we're ranked this year. Total yards, 455.5 against, 32 in the league. Passing yards, 279.2, 30th. Rushing yards, 165.5 against, 30th. Points against, 35.3, 32. Third down conversion rate against, 52.8. That puts them at last in the league. 32. They are the worst defense in the league this year, and they could be historically by the end of the year in the NFL, not just Detroit Lions. We've already had that before with Patricia, where he had the worst defense in the league historically. Aaron Glenn is on the verge of destroying Matt Patricia in that scenario. So you can't sit there and tell me that Aaron Glenn is not on the hot seat. They come out and they play the New England Patriots this week, coming up this Sunday. Who's the quarterback? Mac Jones looks like he's close to returning this week. He's throwing, I guess he was throwing well. He's throwing off that foot, got that high ankle sprain. It looks like he was putting pressure on his leg, not showing any signs really of any setbacks. Hoyer doesn't look like he's going to go because he's got the concussion, I think. And Bailey Zappi, their 6th-round pick, rookie, who was like 10 of 15 last week I think he had a fumble and a touchdown. But he was throwing the ball against the Green Bay Packers, completing passes. But it's not a good offense in New England. But they do rush for 128.5 yards per game. That puts them at number 10 in the league. And they do convert third down percentage, 39.1. That puts them at 15, so a little bit better than average. Other than that, they don't score a lot of points. They average at like 18.5. It puts them at 23. And they pass for about 212.8 yards a game. It puts them at 22. So they don't pass the ball well. They don't score a lot of points. That's what they pretty much do. And this is not a preview. I'll be talking about this as well in my preview, but this is not a preview, so I don't want to dive too much into it. But this is pretty much what it is. And there's no offensive coordinator over there in New England. Matt Patricia is like a senior football advisor and O-line coach. Joe Judge is an offensive assistant and the quarterback's coach. Evan Rothstein is an offensive assistant, and then a guy named Tyler Hughes, who's an offensive assistant. Evan Rothstein, that sounds familiar. Was he on the Lions before? Was he on the Lions? I swear I heard that guy's name on the coaching staff for Detroit a few years back when Patricia was here. I could be wrong, though. But I swear he was a part of Detroit Lions. I'm going to have to look that up. So, Aaron Glenn is 100% on the hot seat here. If he lays an egg against this team, against this New England team, and we just talked about this with the Seattle Seahawks. This is the same conversation that we're having, pretty much. Not as focal, I don't think, but we were going into that game, Seattle, with playing a horrible offense. Seattle could not run the ball. Geno Smith was completing a lot of passes at a high percentage rate, but he wasn't throwing a lot of touchdowns. And he looked like Joe Montana, Steve Young, all wrapped in one. And then Rashad Penny looked like Marshawn Lynch. So we're going kind of into that same situation, except I don't think the quarterback situation is better. Because even if Mac Jones plays, I don't think he's a great quarterback. But if we're going up against Bailey Zappi and we don't win this football game and that guy leads that offense into 30-plus points, Glenn has to go. Something has to happen. And you better find somebody within that organization for the rest of the year until you can find someone for next year. Because Aaron Glenn is going to get Dan Campbell fired. If Dan Campbell has this mentality of that's his buddy from New Orleans, because he has to learn how to decipher between friendship and your work. And Aaron Glenn has to realize that too. This is a business, man. You should never hire your buddies anyways, but they all do. They all do in the NFL. They all hire their friends. It's the old boys club. It's been like that since the beginning of time. But Aaron Glenn is going to get Dan Campbell fired if he lets this continue. And I don't think it's going, if it continues, he's gone. This is an Aaron Glenn game coming up. People said it was last week. Sure, I agree. It gets worse week to week. It's going to get worse week to week. And we're playing another bad offense. Another bad offense, man. That doesn't do a lot, but they do run the ball well. That's really about it. And they convert third downs on a 15 at about middle of the pack, a little bit better. So it's not like this team has got all kinds of weapons, man. And we'll talk about that in my preview. But this is an Aaron Glenn game, and he is 100% on the hot seat. And I don't think Dan Campbell is going to sit there and let this happen. He can't. He can't fall on the sword for Aaron Glenn. It's just not going to happen. It's not a reality. So I don't want to hear that Aaron Glenn's got no weapons. He's got nobody to work with. That's complete BS. Are we devoid of talent in certain situations, certain positions? Sure. Just like every other NFL team is. But coaching is huge. They said that they were going to put the players in the best position for them to feel comfortable and for us to win some ball games. Aaron Glenn is not doing that. His schemes suck. I've never seen a team so undisciplined on biting play action and counters. I've never seen it. And that's on the players as well as the coaches. It's on everybody. Coaches have to be smarter. Players have to be smarter. But the guy that's going to take the heat is going to be Aaron Glenn. And he's the guy that's going to get fired next. It's not going to be Dan Campbell. It's not going to be Brad Holmes, even though those guys have to take some of the blame. They have to. It was Dan Campbell's guy. Brad Holmes is not delivering in the draft like he should be. I understand what Brad Holmes is doing. What I think he's doing, he's drafting for the future. That has to stop now. That has to stop. Next year, they can't do that. I think he's smart enough to know this. Because at least we got a couple guys back in Pascal and Jacobs. They're not going to make a huge difference, but they're we don't really know what Pascal is as an NFL player. We've seen some good out of Jacobs. Hopefully Pascal was an exceptional run stuffer in college, but that's college. We haven't seen him at the pro level. But at least those two guys are back. But Aaron Glenn, you're on the hot seat, bro. You're walking on hot coals. And I think if he lays an egg with this New England offense, they give up a ton of points, and they happen to lose the game, I think he's gone. He might not get fired right away. He might get put up in the booth, just like they wrapped up Anthony Lynn in a swaddled him up really comfortable, rocked him to sleep, brought him upstairs, and put him to bed in the corner, and then they patted him on the head, closed his eyes, and they let him go that night. They have to do the same thing with Aaron Glenn. They can't keep doing this. They can't. And I hope I'm not having this conversation this time next week. Because it'll probably be earlier. It'll be on a Monday. This is on a Wednesday. But that's the video, guys. Glenn's on the hot seat. You can't convince me otherwise. He has to have a good game defensively this week. Has to. They're changing things up, apparently. We're going to see guys are getting called up. Guys are coming back. Guys are going to be put in different positions. I'm telling you, this is the kiss of death right here. It's a one change thing. NFL's not for long. It stands for the National Football League, but it also stands for not for long. So that's it, guys. Thanks for the video. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the bottom right. Don't forget to hit the notification bell on my videos. And don't forget to like, comment, share this out. Thanks a lot, guys. One Pride, go Lions. Boom.